Good morning, everyone. Thank you for able to join us live on Facebook, and we also appreciate everyone who able is able to watch the recordings on YouTube or Facebook. Thank you so much to everyone who's doing the liking, subscribing, and sharing. We appreciate it. This is My Empowered Political Life for April 25th, 2025. And today we're going to talk about how there is no Ukrainian peace deal in sight. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. And it's been a couple weeks since we have updated on Ukraine. So we're going to recap the last couple weeks and what's changed since we last covered it. So you may remember a couple weeks ago, the Ukrainians captured two Chinese nationals on the front lines. We are getting more news about this at this time. So some updates on the Chinese involvement. According to Western intelligence, there appear to be about 150 to 200 Chinese troops fighting for the Russians on or near the front lines. So it was not just a couple. We kind of suspected it was not just a couple, but there are multiple hundreds at least. They do appear to be Chinese regulars, including officers, and they are advising the Russians on drone use while also learning lessons from the way the Ukrainian war is fought and the way drones are being used now. And those lessons presumably would be used in any sort of invasion of Taiwan. An update on the North Korean troops. We've known for a long time that at least 12,000 North Koreans are fighting for Russia. That's the minimum number. My gut feeling is there's a lot more. It turns out that two wounded North Koreans were captured alive, and talks are ongoing about what to do with them. For a long time, North Koreans resisted being captured alive. Indeed, these two probably did not want to be captured alive. We talked about why a couple of weeks ago, because the families of the North Korean soldiers are being sequestered in North Korea, and the families would be threatened if the North Koreans are captured alive. But two of them were captured alive. They may not be safe back in North Korea if they are repatriated to North Korea. And South Korea has said they would accept them as defectors. Of course, if they then defected to South Korea, who is an ally of Ukraine, that also could go poorly for the families of these soldiers. So I feel bad for those soldiers. There's no great outcome for them. And let's be clear about why there is no sign of peace coming right now. Russia continues to attack Ukrainian civilians despite various ceasefire proposals. The US government has tried to negotiate several ceasefire proposals, and each time Russia violated them within hours. And even when Russia said, "Well, we will just stop attacking Ukrainian civilians," they violated that and continued to send missiles and drones to attack Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. And the Russian mistreatment of Ukrainian civilians when they've occupied territories has been well documented. You may have heard about the what's called the Bucha massacre. There have been lots of other massacres, mistreatment of civilians, kidnapping of Ukrainian children. There's been a lot of reporting on all of this over the last few years. And the Ukrainians are understandably very angry about that. And they don't want to leave their civilians in Russian hands. Also, they just don't want to let Russians occupy their territory anymore. Their territory was invaded. The Russians currently have about 20% of Ukrainian territory, and the Ukrainians are incredibly, if you speak to any of your Ukrainian friends or listen to Ukrainian sources, they are incredibly angry at how Russia has treated the people in the occupied territories, and they just don't want to abandon those folks. And Russia, on its part, is not willing to stop attacking or give up the territory it's captured. Russia is still trying to make advances. They're still on the offensive. They're still trying to capture more Ukrainian territory. And then we have, of course, the current peace plan proposal from the Trump administration. And as far as I can tell, this is what this peace proposal is. Russia gets to keep all of the occupied territory it captured, which again is about 20% of Ukraine. Russia gets a ceasefire that will let them rebuild their military, which has been devastated over the last few years. The Russians have lost a massive amount of their combat capability in Ukraine without a lot of gain to show for it. And so they would get a ceasefire that lets them rebuild. And Ukraine, according to this peace proposal, gets nothing. As far as I can tell, Ukraine has to give up everything. They have to give Russians a ceasefire that will let them rebuild. They have to give up the occupied territory. They have to let the civilians there remain under Russian domination. And in return, Ukraine gets nothing for it. They don't get returned territory. They don't get a security guarantee. That might be one thing if they could join NATO or otherwise get some sort of enforceable security guarantee, that might be some inducement. But Ukraine is getting, they don't get to join NATO, they don't get a security guarantee, which means Russia can take a few years to rebuild and they just restart. And the Ukrainians obviously don't trust the Russians on any of this. So this is not a peace proposal that's going to go anywhere. And we still are going to cover more on Ukraine. We did this a couple weeks ago, and a couple weeks from now, we'll cover more. We're going to keep covering the current state of the conflict. We'll talk about NATO's military buildup and rearmament, and the incredible advancements in terms of tactics and technology. This is the most modern war we've seen. A lot of it's being fought by drones at this point, and the involvement of various other nations coming in on the sides of the various belligerents in this conflict. Again, smash that like button, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for doing the easy things that help us out. We're very grateful and we appreciate it. All right, let's get to doors and corners.
I kept telling him, I said, it's doors and corners, kid. If you don't clear the room, if you don't come in slow, that room will eat you.
So just like a good detective, we're going to look around the doors and corners. We want to keep making sure that that room does not eat us and we don't go in too fast. So it now seems clear that the Chinese troops, they were not just a handful of volunteers. They are troops sent by the Chinese government. They're Chinese regulars, including officers. So the Chinese are serious about getting real frontline experience. And the Russians clearly think they need Chinese help, which is interesting as well. The North Korean troops who were captured, um, these are essentially innocent people, right? The North Korean government is not innocent. These troops are conscripted. They're poor people in North Korea. They're conscripted into the North Korean army, and they have no choice about any of this. I don't think they wanted to go fight Ukrainians in Russia. They have no beef. These people do with the Ukrainians they're shooting at. Now, remember, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, it turns out the North Korean troops are much more fit and capable than we ever thought. But these people had no choice in this, and they now have the opportunity to get out and defect to South Korea, which is a Ukrainian ally. But again, their families at home will pay the price for that. So there is no good outcome for those North Korean troops who are captured. Peace is not going to come anytime soon. The Russians still want to take over Ukraine. They're still advancing on the battlefront. They're still attacking Ukrainian infrastructure behind the front lines, shutting down power and water systems, killing civilians at schools and apartments. And so Russia still wants to take over Ukraine, and Ukraine, understandably, does not want to be conquered by Russia. So as long as Russia keeps wanting to take over Ukraine, there's not going to be a peace deal because the Ukrainians are not going to just roll over and let that happen. And any peace deal that allows Russia to keep control of 20% of Ukraine and keep terrorizing the Ukrainian civilians is simply not going to work. It's not going to work for Ukraine. They are not going to let Russia keep 20% of their territory. They're not going to let Russia keep terrorizing the Ukrainian civilians. They're not going to let Russia keep all the Ukrainian children, according to some reports, up to 20,000 that were renditioned to Russia. So it seems intractable at this point because the two sides' goals are just completely opposite. And Ukraine is not going to just say, we'll give up 20% of our territory and let Russia rebuild their military and attack us again in a couple years. Ukraine, as I said before, might agree to some sort of concessions if they got a security guarantee, if they got to join NATO, but that's not on the table apparently. So I'm really not sure why Ukraine would agree to any of these so-called peace deals on the table. So it's going to keep going for a while. It's a horrible situation. You may have seen some of the video of the devastation that's happening there. It's not great. So I will see you guys soon.